Teddy Roosevelt 2019 is not monetized. If you like this content, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you. In late February of 2020, I learned about a propaganda technique called the wrap-up smear.
Called the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press.
February 21st, 2020, the Star Tribune ran the headline, Russia helping Trump again. It appears the wrap-up smear of Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump from February 20th is starting to unravel. The New York Times posted this correction. The correction says, though intelligence officials have disputed that the officer who delivered the main briefing said Russia was actively aiding the president's re-election.
President Trump is leaving today for India amid a growing controversy back home over what Russia plans to do in terms of interfering in the upcoming U.S. election. So let's bring in CNN White House correspondent Jeremy Diamond. Jeremy's got brand new reporting on this story. Jeremy, we need to put a fine point on this because it is complex, it is nuanced. We know that the top intelligence official for election security, her name is Shelby Pearson, she told lawmakers just over a week ago in a briefing on Capitol Hill that the Russians have a preference for the president in the 2020 race.
No, CNN, you're wrong. The headlines were not that the Russians had a preference for Donald Trump. The headlines and the reporting for 2 days was that the Russians were helping Donald Trump again and were involved in ongoing election interference.
Now, your sources are telling you that it's not as simple as that. Why?
Look, none of this is really cut and dry, Alex, and it is complicated and it is nuanced. What we are hearing from 3 national security officials is that Pearson may have overstated the extent of the U.S. intelligence as it relates to Russian interference. She said that Russia was interfering in the 2020 election with the goal of trying to help President Trump's re-election campaign. Now, those 3 national security officials tell us that this is actually what the intelligence says. On the one hand, that Russia is indeed interfering in the 2020 election, and secondly, that Russia views Trump as a leader that it can work with. But the U.S. doesn't yet have the evidence to actually conclude that Russia is interfering in the election.
Wait, the headline said ongoing election interference by Russia.
Because of the fact that they view Trump as a leader they can work with, because they have a preference for President Trump.
A story posted on Sunday. DNI briefer Shelby Pearson is the one who overstated or manufactured intel on Russian election interference. Sending shockwaves through the intelligence community, it was reported yesterday that newly appointed Director of National Intelligence, Rick Grinnell, asked the intelligence community, specifically Shelby Pearson, to provide the underlying intelligence within the briefing she gave the House Intelligence Committee. She was the woman who said in the intelligence briefing that the Russians were trying to get Donald Trump reelected and were meddling in the upcoming 2020 election. I find it convenient that the intelligence official that made the assertion the Russians had a preference for Trump went quote-unquote off script when asked about Russia's preference for Trump in the presidential election. It appears to me a Democratic member of the committee asked a question which the intelligence briefer was prepared for and gave an answer which the media could print.
You call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, you call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody.
Even Jake Tapper from CNN is kind of calling nonsense on this story. He has sources that say the intelligence did not say the Russians had a preference for Trump. Trump was only someone they could work with. He's a deal maker. And that headline was all over the news on Friday and Saturday of this last week. Well, what do you know? All of a sudden, anonymous intelligence officials are reporting to CNN that Ms. Pearson overstepped her position, was misleading in her briefing, and mischaracterized the underlying intelligence. Imagine that.
You call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, you call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody.
So this country had to suffer for 2 days stories in the news media about how Russia is trying to help get President Donald Trump reelected or Bernie Sanders elected president. And that cat was let out of the bag when Shelby Pearson overstated or manufactured intel on Russian election interference.
Now, one official said that Pearson's characterization of the intelligence was misleading. Another official said that it lacked nuance.